This is the dimension of imagination. It is an area which we call the Twilight Zone.
And now, Mr. Serling. We have a return visit next week from a most eminent performer, Joseph Schildkraut. And his vehicle is called the Trade-Ins. It's a story of a future society in which new bodies may be traded for old. It's my own personal feeling that of all the various story areas we've tackled in the Twilight Zone, this has the most import and carries with it the most poignance. I hope you'll be able to be with us next week. Here in one cigarette at Chesterfield is all the flavor and taste of 21 of the world's finest tobaccos, aged mild and then blended mild. The end result, tobacco too mild to filter, pleasure too good to miss. Smoke for pleasure, smoke Chesterfield.
Welcome to the Holodeck, our adventures through things that are non-Trek. This edition we're going through the Twilight Zone, the Trade-Ins, where a couple faced with a Westworldian choice of improving their bodies to regain eternal life, presented with a bit of a cash dilemma. Otto, why pick this episode? What brought you to this to add this one to your repertoire of recommendations?
Well,
Also,
like Rod said,
welcome Marie as well. Marie's joining us this week. She's we've upscaled Dan this week.
yeah.
Say hello to my
like
best
that.
friend Marie, who we have definitely upscaled for. Guess what? I love Benjamin, but
We've
Marie
traded
is
in
the
Dan's
one.
body for Marie's.
We did. How's it going, Dan? How's the body feel?
Like Rod said, all the sentimentalists in the Twilight Zone, of which I am one, we don't get too many episodes like this where it ends on a happy note. Everyone is a good guy in this episode. Even the salesman, who Marie said came off like a car salesman at first, he has a genuine sympathy and understanding for these people. And only in the Twilight Zone could you have a back room full of gamblers who don't take advantage of this guy and actually let him off the hook. So it's an uplifting episode. It's a romantic episode, and it has just enough of the sci-fi conceit there to reach, I think, a broader audience. So I really enjoyed it. But I want to start off with the end here because Idle had no clue what was going on. How many people were confused here by the
Very
scene at the end
confused.
between...
For a moment, I was, and then I kind of got what was going on.
Did they kind of just have a realization between them, like unspoken realization that actually, we should finish our lives together, something like that? Because all of a sudden it was a very shocking, exchange of looks. I thought he'd suddenly gone actually, no, I'm young and you're not. I could get a different lady or something like that. It was like some part of my brain was just like, what is actually going on here? Is this going to be the Twilight, or is there going to be something wrong with his body that he's just discovered that he can't find wrong with her? But no, it just seemed to be like an internal realization.
I kind of thought the same thing. At first I was kind of confused. I was like, is he realizing, okay, that long life is going to be a little one-sided? Or is he realizing he's like, wait, I'm young now. This might not work out. And I was kind of leaning on is it going to do that? I kind of assumed it was going to do that. I'm like, oh, don't hurt me like this. Don't hurt me like this. Come on. If the mobster was a good guy, don't hurt me like this with this last part. And it shows the husband in the end ended up kind of essentially backstabbing her in a way. And I'm like, don't, come on.
Yeah.
So when he walked out, I'm like, okay, what's he doing? What's he doing? Oh, he got him. He put the defroster on and got the
So,
I'm like, okay, cool. So it ended up being a lot more heartwarming.
I want to hear Star's interpretation of this before we go further.
Oh, what, of the eye exchange?
Yeah, that particular scene.
Yeah, so I find it interesting because I like characters that explore the idea of dysmorphia, dysphoria. Guess what? My favorite character is Beast, who is literally a character based around the idea that your inner self does not match your outer self. That is what that character is about. So I love things that go through these ideas. So for a moment, I was kind of caught off guard because I would have figured that if they were going to go with such a this is our visual language for the moment of, oh, I can't do this. The cuts between the young, youthful eyes and then the old wrinkles, that's what that's communicating is just, no, I can't do this. The the inequality of this is such that I can't stand it. This is not who I am. This is not who I am to Marie. This is not the life I want. This is not. These are not the eyes that I saw her first. That kind of thing is what I. It was shot a little bit weirdly. I kind of would have liked it if earlier on in the episode they had like taken pains to do maybe like a slow shots of their eyes, like looking between each other, maybe while the salesman was talking to them, so that you could have a strong visual contrast of like the slow, the loving look to the fuck. This is not going to work out. But it communicated what it was trying to get about. Just a little bit more heavy-handedly than I think the rest. But then it is a little bit of an obvious episode, but I kind of appreciated that about it.
It was quite straightforward, wasn't it? We were all expecting the Twilight Zone-esque. What's going to be the thing? Is the body going to like die after 2 years, or is it going to have like extra big, large fingers because it can't handle something grotesque? But no, it was fairly straightforward. The whole salesman.
The twist is that there's no twist and love wins. Which doesn't usually happen.
A little bit. The salesman who is also the surgeon, who is also the business and CEO of the company. Obviously.
They're
sold a good product. Like we kind of got like hints that this might be like a dystopia a little bit with the whole, what was it called, the New Body? No, what was the company?
New Life Corporation.
New Life Corporation. That's like very kind of like expect like clean buildings, but there was a shady underbelly underneath it. We kind of a little bit of world building there, but actually turns out it's all just fine. Fun fact. The director, Elliot Silverstein, wasn't getting the reaction he wanted when those two were interacting, the younger body and the older Marie. So in the scene where they realise the plan hasn't gone the way they expected, they did some tight shots as he fired a gun off stage, like to get the appropriate shock reaction. So that might be why it was very kind of.
Was this guy a friend of Alfred Hitchcock? Was he like on the set of like the Birds? Because like I don't know if you've heard that story about Hitchcock, but like there's like the Birds and like the female lead was like, look, I'll star in this film about the birds, but I have a pathological fear of birds. I can only be certain shots. And then Hitchcock was like, yeah, we'll make sure. Starts whipping birds at this poor goddamn woman to get the right reaction because Hitchcock was a fucking maniac.
Well,
but I guess this guy was like, it's not quite as bad as that. Like he's not firing off by their heads, I guess, but still, that's a fucking way to do it.
So while we're on that scene, I want to hit two birds with one stone, because two criticisms I've seen about this is, the poker scene doesn't matter. Which, fuck off. I love the poker scene. And secondly, it's a big plot hole. Why doesn't he just take the switch and then earn the money and then she can join him? And that scene tells you exactly why. She's the one that has the shocked expression first. She looks at him, and in that moment she realizes this isn't going to work. This isn't who I fell in love with. This isn't who I spent 50 years loving. And, they didn't do the tight shots early on, but we see them holding hands. They spent 50 years together. No, I won't do it if we can't both do it. They're lovey-dovey even in their twilight years. And so in that moment, they realized this disparity wouldn't work. And even if he had taken the switch and worked, $5,000 back then, how long would he have had to work to save that up? Maybe 5 years? Could they live together and love each other in 5 years with a 20-something man? Would they even be
sure that she would live that long? Yeah.
A 70-something woman? What if she died? So it really... And then the poker scene underscores it. It's not about money. That's why he leaves with the same amount that he came with. Even if he had the money and they both made the switch, would they have loved each other in the new bodies? Maybe not. So it's really... But the story is about accepting that stage of life. And actually, let me go ahead and read, because that Robert Browning poem... Grow old with me, the best is yet to be, the last of life for which the first is made. The second part of that stanza, I think, also really fits the episode. Our times are in his hand, who saith, a whole I planned. Youth shows but half. Trust God, see all, nor be afraid. I love the end of that. Youth shows but half. We want to be young again, but that's only half the story. See all and don't be afraid. And, they're basically... escorting them into the twilight years of their lives, saying, you can't go back again. Enjoy the time that you have. And I think that that's really a lovely sentiment.
Yeah, I'm This is going to be the first episode I feel like I did not gel with at all. I'm gonna counter you, Otto, and I'm going to be afraid.
You're not a romantic like
I am definitely not a romantic. I try and stay away from lovey-dovey stories. You know, I mean, I know Star's going to come up with, what about Chapel and Spock in Strange New Worlds? Yeah, that's a tragedy, because we know what's going to happen. So I'm more invested in a broken romance.
So you only like love when it's torture, huh?
Pretty much, yeah. And it's just more interesting narratively. I don't know. I found just to speak of the whole episode, like, I don't know whether it's my preconceptions of what I'm expecting a Twilight episode to be. And I appreciate it can go all sorts of ways, and I appreciate that the Twilight Zone aspect of this was the fact that yes, you can swap bodies. It's easy. Anyone can do it. It's not a scam. It's all fine. And like the moral dilemma of, you know, eternal youth, is it worth it in the long game? Like, I feel like I've seen those stories played out in other areas. Obviously, this is probably early on, but like you mentioned earlier, Otto, the poker game was, because I asked when we were watching through, like, so he came in with 5,000. I was expecting him to win double his money and go out, spend 10,000, have them both converted, and then there's something horribly wrong, and that'd be the twist. But it turned out, no, he just wins 5,000, which, yeah, I kind of agree that the poker scene was... it was a little bit of character building for him, but it was mostly pointless because he came in after saying, no, it can't be me, and walked out going, has to be me. So I was a bit...
I couldn't disagree more. That poker scene is integral. Because that is the episode showing its hand. That is the episode,
so to speak.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you for picking up on that. Because it's like you say, you have the first 15 minutes, and it's this setup of it's the dilemma, it's the concept, it's like the choice, and then it's like, okay, how do we approach this? How do we fix it? So you have a 5-minute scene that does nothing because he ends up in the same place where he was, except it doesn't. It does something. It illustrates just how far he's willing to go for Marie in a way that is separate from her. He is willing to sit there in agony for hours on the off chance that he can win her a new life. So that's number one. Number two, it illustrates that even though you're in the Twilight Zone, this is not the same kind of bleak dystopian world we've been getting for so many of these episodes. This is a world that is... it has its unkindness. It has its capitalist unkindness, because guess what? Capitalism is the devil. But people have hearts. People are not Bond villains. People have it within them to be nice and to take a kindness. And not even to take a kindness, maybe. Maybe just to not be cruel is enough sometimes. And that is the episode kind of foreshadowing that this is going to have a happy end. Because if a man who has absolutely no reason to be kind to John is willing to do him the kindness of not taking away from him, then he lives in a world that is not that cruel to him, that will give him a chance to realize his lesson before it's too late. That's why they're very painstaking with their, you get a 1-week period to back out and it's completely fine, 98% satisfaction, but it's not 100%. They put that in there to illustrate the hints are all there that this is where the episode is going to go. So that seems really, really important. And it's also a case of it puts you in John's headspace and you understand exactly what he's trying to work for here. It's really, really indicative of just how far he's willing to go, the tension, the desperation, and you say, it has to be me. He doesn't believe it. You can see in his body language and in his voice that he's psyching himself up because now he's out of options. But he doesn't believe it. They go in for it, but they don't linger on, old John going in for the body, because it's a case of, no, you need to understand that old John is not capable of this. He tries it and it doesn't work, and that's why that poker scene is integral.
I mean, what a nice company as well. They don't offer credit. If you were a capitalist company offering bodies to the young, and you think, right, yeah, you can have this body, but you've got to pay us 20% of your earnings over the next 100 years, you'd do that. But they're just no, well, five grand cash or nothing.
There's a government regulation prohibiting that, which I find interesting, because there's all sorts of things you could read into that. Yeah. Before we get too far away, I want to run down that scene because I really, really like it. We start with Faraday. He's humming. He's noodling on the piano. He's got the necktie undone around. It's just a great bit of character there. Holt enters the shark cage, and they actually encircle him as he approaches the table, which is kind of foreboding and ominous. And then we get this awesome line read from Joseph Schildkraut, this manic line read, "Bigger than these, Mr. Faraday," and he lays down his three kings, and
I couldn't work out if he was like trying to he was like bluffing the whole time, like, "Ha ha, fuck you," or if he was just like desperate, or was just kind of, "Oh, please win."
It's all of that. It's tears, it's laughter, it's desperation, it's triumph. By the way, I love that a little bit of subtlety now is throwing us after episodes of just like in your face stuff. And so we get close shots on Holt, and he's holding his breath the whole time. Cut back to Faraday, Holt, Faraday, and I was watching stars get closer and closer to his camera. He's like, what is going to happen? And then we see the aces, and he closes them. He's like, nope, not bigger than that, Pops. And then Holt lets out his breath. And we get this great shot. Then I'll jump ahead. This is my bread, but Holt is talking about Marie will understand. She'll understand what I tried to do. And they show Faraday, and it's so perfect. I went back and counted it. It's exactly 1.5 seconds. And his ears droop. He gets this dark look over his face, and his lower lip starts to quiver. And in the early 60s, on those black and white sets, 80% of the people watching would not have seen that. It was the most subtle moment we've had so far. This guy's about to lose it in front of all these other card sharks because he feels for this guy. And then, Holt gets up and leaves, and Faraday is like, what the hell? Why did I just do that? What the hell just happened? He scoffs to himself. He can't believe it. There's that episode just dripping with character. And so, did it like progress the plot? Not really, but it explained a lot of things. It foreshadowed a lot of things, and I really love that scene.
I think if we're going to introduce a character that rich, I would like him in a context where he would be used more instrumental to the story. I don't know. You'll probably disagree with me on this one as well, but I feel like I'd like to see him in another episode coming up. Or I'd like to see this generous gangster. How does his operation work? Like, he's obviously got a soft spot, but I need to know more about his character. As like more like as rather just a kind of like a generous foil to enable the guy to leave with the same amount of money he came in with.
But here's the thing. I think you're misunderstanding. I don't think he's generous at all. I just think he's just not cruel. I think it's that simple. I think it's a case of like, you can see it. He's thinking about it. He is not a generous man. Although, guess what? A generous man does not invite a 79-year-old man who is in obvious, freaking, pain to sit down and think and enclose him with all his buddies and sit there for hours, getting him in just the right position to take all his money. A generous man does not do that. But a man who is neither kind nor cruel, but just human, does let him go when he's on the hook. That's what that is. I feel like you're interpreting it as like it's about this character, and he's kind of more of a cipher for Holt here, and it's like he has all the right emotions, and like he's almost like a kind of a mirror of like the qualities that you want to see in Holt, where it's a case of Holt is like this a romantic at heart, right? You get that like right away with all like the quoting of the poetry and just like how much he's like fawning over Marie, and then you get to see an element of that in Faraday. And that scene is not really about Faraday, even though like the actor does an amazing job and he's got all these little character tics. It's telling you about Holt. That's what it's about.
Marie, now that you've traded to a younger body, how do you feel this side of the process? It was about halfway through the episode and I was realised, oh, you've got the same name. That's going to make things awkward.
Yeah, let me ask what you thought about the pacing, because when you have mostly older actors, you run a risk of it being, to younger people, a little bit slow, a little bit uninteresting. How did you feel about the pacing in this one?
I thought it was fine. I had no role negative comment, or really it went along in a decent flow that I didn't really notice if it was slow or fast or anything. It just seemed to just kind of carry the story along, and I was good. I was mostly focused on the episode being going in a different route than I anticipated. Like at the very start, the salesman not taking the credit, not kind of like trying to scheme a little more. I'm like, okay, he seems very car salesman-y, and then I'm like, okay, he's kind of letting him off a little bit. He's just giving him the details and is backing off. interesting. Okay, that's already going down a path I wasn't expecting. And it kind of just continued to do that on like key decision like moments. And I'm like, okay, even down with the like the card scene. I wasn't expecting the card trick to kind of like let him off. I was expecting him to just like, well, Ace is like, as soon as there was like a delay with him putting the cards in, I'm like, oh, he's got aces, doesn't he? He's got aces. I'm like, I'm just thinking of something like, oh, this old, like this poor man. And I'm like, just okay, just do it. Just rip off the band and just show him the cards already. And he's just like, no, I'm not gonna. I'm like, you're not. I'm like, just each time it was like the opposite decision I thought was gonna happen. So it kind of like kept me engaged, kept me like very interested in the whole way through. But
I want to fold in a bit of a Trek reference here. So if we go back to the scene where Marie is shocked and she realizes she can't live with this arrangement, I thought about the episode from Next Generation called The Host, where Beverly Crusher is in love with a visiting dignitary, and he's ill. He's got to move to a different body because, well, we'll skip the details, but he inhabits the body of one of her co-workers, William Riker, Commander Riker. And she has this big crisis of conscience. Can I love this man who I've known in a different context? He doesn't look the same, but part of him somehow is still the same man that I knew. And she slowly comes around to it, right at the point where he has to switch into a third body. And then we get another host come on, and it happens to be a woman. And she gives this line at the end, and she says, perhaps it's a human failing, but we are not accustomed to these kind of changes. I can't keep up. How long will you have this host? Who would the next one be? I can't live with that kind of uncertainty. Perhaps someday our ability to love won't be so limited. And I think Alma Platt, I believe her name is the actress, does a good job. And they hit that sting, which is really loud and very dramatic, clawing at the face. So it may have gone up a little high for modern viewers, but I think she really carried that well. Like, I was confused initially, and then I realized she can't live with this arrangement. She's looking through different eyes than she's looked at for 50 years. And even though her husband may be in there some way, she can't make that leap yet, let alone at her own age. You know, maybe if she had time to adjust, but it's a little tragic in a way, even though it's a very uplifting episode, but
how about the concept of moving bodies? Because this has been established in various science fiction, you know, from Star Trek to Westworld to all sorts of things. You know, the idea of transmitting your consciousness over to a different body and all the inherent dangers that it is. You know, this is kind of the conceit it started off with the showroom full of very young and fit models in various salacious poses being presented to this old couple, which is a little bit racy for 50s television, I thought. But yeah, what do we think about the concept as it's being shown here, even though it kind of isn't central to the plot a little bit? It is almost like the device as opposed to the theme.
Yeah, it's very much more like the vehicle that they're using to examine like themes of love and sentimentality in old age. And I was kind of surprised. They make a point of saying, "Oh, it transmits over your emotional state as well," and I was like, "That's a very particular way of putting that. Like, how do you know that? Because like also neurochemistry is exactly, you know, it's very weird science, but like all kinds of things going on with it. It's like, okay, how do you know that? And it's like, oh, because it's important. It's really plot integral that the emotional reality comes over as well. And it's like, yeah, if this episode were made now, I feel like there would be way more of an emphasis on how John would feel in the new body, because they take great pain to establish that he's in great pain, and have the whole scene where he's like dancing around on the tables and stuff like that. Because I feel like if that weren't there, you would have a scene instead where he kind of, maybe he's like the wrong height. Maybe he's left-handed now instead of right-handed, like that kind of like weirdness.
Keeps dropping all the spoons. It could be turned into a comedy then, wouldn't it? A situational comedy. A left-handed person is now a right-handed person. Yeah.
And you'd go into
that
story.
That fits the theme of the episode. Let's go that direction.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, like, if you made it now, like this would be a really obvious trans metaphor.
Yeah.
But because of the time period, it's way more of a sci-fi analog for examining the themes of like just like about who you are and what you feel, just in a different context. So it's interesting in that way.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think if it was done today, they probably would go that route, just because that's another avenue to explore. So
I feel like I've seen shows that have done it. I mean, like Battlestar Galactica explores that a little bit as well. You know, the human to Cylon body relationship, and not quite as in depth. And like I've mentioned it a few times as well, Westworld with consciousness transference and things like that. And yeah, obviously Star Trek with the Trill and other avenues as well. And you know, the what is the Ziantara? Well, that's the Trill. Extracting of memories and things.
It's
like
all
that.
trills all the way down.
It is all trill. Yeah, that is the trans metaphor of Star Trek, really.
And then Discovery like drilled down on that by having Gray and Adira, which is way more of an obvious.
Yes, that's a good point actually. Yeah. But yes, let's go on to our bread. Yes, the moment in the episode that stuck out to you the most, Marie. I appreciate you're new to this. This is What moment in the episode just stuck in your brain that just lingered there the same way as an aphasic captain of a starship of a space station did to that episode we watched?
Maybe it's a little weird. It was a really short part, but it was fairly easy or fairly early in the episode where they're John and Marie walk in to go look at the models. They're holding hands. And they kind of zoom in to the models holding hands and then go back to them also like kind of holding hands and kind of like looking at their hands and stuff. And that kind of seemed like, okay, they're locked in to do this. Like they're set. And I don't know, for some reason I kept thinking about that part. I don't know. I liked it. It was just a small part, but I'm just like, oh, they're settled. They're like, no matter what, they're going to say yes to this. They're going to do their best to go and make this happen. They're set on this path. And so it's just kind of just that short scene.
And then he walks in and goes, I got 3 feet. I got 3 feet.
Yeah, basically. I can definitely understand why that would stick in your brain, because it's like, you're like 5 minutes into the episode and you look down and think, okay, we've got 25 minutes. We've now established through visual shorthand that so long as they can be together, they'll be happy. So what's going to be the catch? And that's why it's sticking in your brain, because you're like, well, okay, what's going to come next? Yeah, and I totally understand why that'd be your bread.
How about you, Stars? What is your bread?
There's a few. I think the number, I'm going to settle on 2. The first one would actually just have to be Faraday and like the shot just down of the 4 of the aces, because it's like, there's so much in that. Like, guess what? I'm a sucker for a good poker scene or like a good Lego card game. Guess what? We're going to be doing our whole Bond series at some point.
Dude, if Faraday started weeping blood, I'd have been like, all right, this is what?
That's a very, very different episode. But yeah, there's a lot of like I said, like you mentioned the actor doing all these real subtle like movements and all these real subtle like facial cues and just the tension of it. And there's no, it's like a case of, okay, is he gonna do the decent human thing, or is he gonna give in to like base capitalist like kind of like culture? And it's like no, and that's gonna stick with me. That random act of kindness or just not cruelty. So that's my first bit of bread. And my second will probably actually be the moment where they're fucking dickbaggish enough to show John's dead body.
Dude,
like
take a look at what
you not. Yeah, no, just like, do you have to do that? Are you just gonna roll it down to the fridge with it next to the pickles? Like,
go ahead,
what?
Poke him.
Imagine if she had a heart attack in that moment and the episode just ended. Like, what?
Then it would have gone down a path that I more predicted.
Yeah. But yeah, like that's gonna stick because it's like the casualness that they treat that the bodies with. Like there's a bit more of that horror-y edge to it in that one glimpse. But I'm glad they don't linger on it. It's like maybe 2-3 seconds and then move it on to the actual important emotional crux of the episode. But those would be my bread of the episode.
How about you, Otto?
Yeah, it's at Faraday. It's a second and a half. I had to go back. I hit back on the video player to watch it again. I'm like, did I see his lip quiver? And that was in like full screen HD. It was so good, and it felt like it was just for me because I initially realized there's no way they're seeing that on those tiny monitors back then. I felt like the actor put that in just for me, and it really drew me in. I'm like, all right, this is a friggin' character, and I wanted that scene to go on a little bit longer than it did.
My bread is a weird one. The bit that was just made like, why are they doing this? But when he finally acquiesces to having the conversion, the wife Marie, she just goes, yes, 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 and I was just like, are you okay? Is this now part of a ritual we're going through? No, she's not. But this is very much okay. Kind of like she's very determined and very like, I'm chanting this in some sort of. I thought like, what direction are we going in now? Is we now going into some sort of cultist ritual, or is someone with hoods going to come out and escort him down to a labyrinthine Cthulhu-esque nightmare? But no, sadly not. So that would be.
You have a weird brain, Idol.
Your wife must be a very happy woman. Well, okay, so he was about to have no pain for the first time in several years, and she couldn't be more excited for him. So that's
oh yeah, I think it was just the delivery more what I was pointing out that why they sort of she was chanting it.
I honestly think that was probably like partly her best acting in the entire episode, because it's just like you get that manicness, you get that almost just feverish. I have to believe that this is going to be right, but I also believe that it's right because the person who I love is going to be without pain. Like it's all of that in one sort of like line read, and it's like, guess what? Like there's a lot of economy in just 8 uses of the word yes delivered by the right actress. Like that's powerful in the right hands. If you just let it play.
All right, let's go over to our.
Well, if that's the best they could do, this should last about 5 minutes.
5 minutes. We will retrace our steps and figure out what's going on.
You've got 5 minutes. Do it.
How would you rewrite the last 5 minutes of this episode to your heart's desires? I'm going to kick things off, and you guys are going to know where I'm going to go with this. I'm going to subvert.
It's very dark, I bet.
It's a little bit. I do like a dark ending. Well, it's just, it's what I expect. But no, I would, get to the point where he's gone through the conversion and he walks out in his new body, but they go off and she doesn't, they don't have the horrified expressions. They go, okay, we'll go and save up for the thing. But actually turns out that there was a little unwritten contract and that he is now a slave for the corporation. Now he the only thing he can do is sell bodies to new people. This is the endless cycle of growing the corporation with the lives of the elderly, tempting them in with the lives of the young, and that would be I told you it was going to be a little bit dark. How about you, Marie? How would you rewrite your last 5 minutes of this?
This is the part I was dreading because I'm like, I'm not going to know what to say for this. Like any of these, I'm not going to know what to say.
I can go first if you want more time to think about it.
No, I have a little something. Like really all I could like think of would be that he comes out young and she's super excited for him. He's finally like no pain, and I was kind of waiting for the salesman to also kind of have that moment that the card shark had of like, okay, I can't just do this for the one. I can't, and just kind of make okay, let me tell you this. How about you both, try out the bodies. I'll give you that week and, see how this is for both of you. If you're determined, then I'll see about like what we can do about getting that second body for you or something like that. I was kind of like waiting for him to also kind of give them essentially a break, like kind of at least kind of be like, I can't do this to them, only doing the one. I can't do that.
Please bring them back in good condition. Like a red.
Like essentially just like, try it out, come back to me. Kind of I was more waiting for it to just kind of keep going that other direction for me.
Well, everyone knows once you walk them off the lot, they lose 70% resale value. So, go ahead.
Yeah.
Guess what? I'm gonna be an absolute sentimentalist here because like I could be a cold hard bastard like Idol. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna say so. We progress through the episode. Young John and old Maria there. They're having the horrified like expressions. John like goes. He starts to back up toward the doors and it's like, oh, we have to do the paperwork. And then Faraday walks in with his,
Oh,
like his coat slightly off the shoulders, eyes downcast, doesn't even look at them. John's confused, and he just walks up to the salesman. You don't even see him hand over the money. He just kind of dumps into him, and then turns and walks out. And then says, "Well, turns out you've got a line of credit, sir." And then they get to walk out young. And guess what? I'll give you a choose your own adventure ending. Either they walk out young and they're happy, or they walk out young and then you get like a 30-second thing of they come back after a week and they decide they want to spend the last years of their lives in their old bodies together. Because yes, eternal youth sounds great and all, but it's not the way we fell in love. Depending on which way you're feeling. So you get your choose your own adventure. Faraday gets to be, I guess what, I bet you he hates himself for doing it. He's like, I'm a fucking sentimentalist fool, but I just can't not. And then you get to choose your theme. Do you choose love wins and we get to have eternal life? Or does love win and we get to die all together? So you get to choose. That's my ending. That's how I rewrite it.
Go on, Otto.
all right. That was my favorite last 5 of any that we've done with bringing Faraday back. So thank you for that. No, come on. You're going to turn off my laptop. That being said, yeah, whatever. You can hate me for this. I'm taking my get out of jail free card. And this one time, my Twilight Zone twist is I would not change this ending.
Ooh.
There's no bad guys. There's no evil twist. There's no foreboding music. Everyone gets to be happy for once, and I really appreciate that. But I also think it's important because I watched this episode a while back with my parents, who one's in their 70s, one's late 60s. And I asked them, well, what do you think? What would you do if you had this chance? And they said, we've had a good run, and we're ready to go home when our time comes. And that's something that, it's funny because the writers' room for Twilight Zone was all 30-something males. So for them to write this, a lot of sentimentalist stuff from older characters is interesting. But, not everyone wants to start again. Not everyone wants to look at different faces and love them the same way that they loved someone for 50 years. So I think it's kind of important message to project that sometimes one life is good enough. So, I'll take the cheap way out and say, I just like it the way that it is.
In the words of William T. Riker, speak for yourself. I'm going to live forever. Okay, let's go on to our rating.
I can show you my rating code.
Schiller rating 3.5.
Associational rating norm -3.
That's much too low a rating.
Much too low a rating.
Seeing an unsatisfactory rating on a member of my crew.
It's unsatisfactory rating. I do have a rating criteria available, but Marie, since you are our guest this week, I wondered if you have anything. I will happily defer to your rating.
I had to write it down because I knew I was going to forget. And I was like, I have to at least think of one because I know they're going to come to me. Like each time, I got to think of one just to make sure.
Marie's setting the bar for guests, by the way. So if you guys are coming,
like I got to make sure I have at least. I got to try and take notes if I can. All I can think of was it's maybe a little too on the nose, perhaps, but I was just thinking like 1 out of 10 New Life Corporation brand human receptacles. Like that's all I can think of.
I like it.
Very I guess Fallout sounding in a way.
No, perfect.
Yeah, it's actually very Fallout. I can see this being a Fallout quest. I can see that. Yeah.
My suggestion, if you want, was going to be how many smooth, milder than mild Chesterfield cigarettes out of 10. But since that's the pre-rating, the pre-roll, and not the actual episode, we'll go with yours, Marie. Speaking of, what would you rate this out of 10? How many New Life Corporation brand human receptacles would you give this?
I was actually going to bump mine up to a 9. I was kind of going back and forth between like 8.5 or a 9. I'm like, I actually quite enjoyed this one, and this is more of like the romantic stuff that I would be interested in. Like it'd be more like this. Like I'm not a big romantic like person. If I like that genre at all, I like it mixed with something typically.
Like sci-fi.
Sci-fi, yeah. In this case, sci-fi. But this is kind of like the level I liked. Like I like seeing the chemistry. I like seeing the kind of like life with like both like characters stuff. I'm not really into the, oh, here's all these dates. Okay, now they're married. That kind of like, I don't know. It's hard for me to describe, but I quite enjoyed this one. It was a lot different than I was expecting, especially given I've only seen 2 other episodes, but it was definitely different than I was expecting. So, 9.
Yeah, I already spoiled it. I'm giving this 10 New Life Corporation
Wow.
branded receptacles out of 10. In an interview, Edson Stroll, who played the young body of John Holt, who we saw in Eye of the Beholder, shepherding Janet off to the colony of ugly, beautiful people. He said director Elliot Silverstein and writer Rod Serling told him that this was their favorite episode. Now, grain of salt, because Rod has said that for about 4 or 5 different episodes, but it's clear that they really like this. And Silverstein did a great job. Some of those shadow shots, the door opens and you can just see the salesman beckoning him without seeing his body. That was a great shot. When they first walk down the hallway and the lights flip on one at a time, that was a fun shot. He did a lot of good stuff there. The tension in that poker scene, it was so fun. I like watching you guys, your reactions, and Stars just edging toward the screen, waiting. What's going to happen? Who's going to... So good direction, great acting, and just knowing the chilled crowd. His wife died during that. Like, the guy was just eaten up inside, and some of those manic line deliveries were so good. And it's nice to get a happy ending. This episode didn't fail to give me anything that I wanted. And so when I thought about, is there anything missing for me? No. So it's 10. I really enjoyed this one.
Stars.
I feel like Otto might hate me for this worse than if I gave it a bad rating.
No.
I'm gonna have to give this a 9.95 out of 10. New Life Brand Corporation.
Careful, you'll turn into a lizard.
Out of 10. It's 9.95, and it's literally just because there is so much visual flair and like the legerdemain and just like sleight of hand and just like this is like directed by an obvious veteran who knows how to work the camera. And I just feel like if they had done like a mirror shot for the eyes at the beginning, like they do it with the hands, which I thought was really, really effective. Like Marie pointed that out for the bread. And I thought that was a really good visual shorthand, like visual show not tell. It's like the oldest rule in the book, and guess what? Because it works when it's done well. And I kind of wish that there had just been like a shot between their eyes, like as they're older, when like, maybe the salesman's talking. And that's the only criticism I can really level at this episode. I think everything else, like from the music, which is very well picked. I imagine it was all stock, but guess what? There's a talent to picking good stock music.
Yep.
The performances are excellent, just the right level of dystopian, but with that sentimentalist heart where it's like, yeah, it's saccharine, yeah, it's a bit cheesy, yeah, it's a little bit too honest, and I like that because that feels genuine. So 9.95 New Life Brand Corporation human receptacles out of 10.
So I'm probably going to get lynched for this.
No.
I didn't really enjoy this one. That's more on me, my personal preferences for storytelling, and I want scenes to have points, and I want the story to tell us. Especially when you're talking about something that's only 25 minutes long. And I know you disagree with me. You stars and yourselves disagree with me. Like on the poker scene, I did find that could have been. In my head, like that could have been told a different way in a different place and had a more meaningful impact to the story rather than just like a poker scene where he walks in with the same amount of money he left with, but with a slightly different resolution that he'd already decided he didn't want to do. I'm not a fan of lovey-dovey stuff, although there are some things I will take a pass for, which is
I'm sure your wife loves you.
She is also equally non-lovey-dovey, so we get on quite well.
There you go.
I like the Tom Paris and Balana episode where they finally sort of hook up. That's the right kind of level of romantic interactivity.
You like Imperfect Love, don't you?
I kind of do, love. And I like that there's
you guys, dude, you're gonna hate the next episode, by the way. So
well, when we're talking about like what I'm watching media for, I'm watching media for the antagonism. I'm watching it for the development of the story. When everything kind of goes just as it should, it kind of lets me down a little bit, and it's a bit like I want to be able to be invested. This one Yeah, it was okay. I like the cinematography. The kind of half dystopian New Life Corporation kind of more felt like it was there to go, hey, we're just this corporation that deals in new bodies, and that's it. We're not going to explore any more of that. They're literally there as they're read, but because our 2024 brains are tuned to our Bioshock-esque Fallout companies that have got to have some sort of like nefarious purposes, that kind of rubs the same way off. So I'm going to give this. You're gonna hate me. I'm gonna give this 4 New Life Corporation brand human receptacles, mostly for the cast and
stricken from the record.
So sorry, but we don't often disagree, and this
nil
is
point.
Nil point. Which brings us down to a respectable.
I can't unfollow.
A respectable 8.2, which leads me to say, Mr. Serling, what are we going to be watching next time?
A pocket watch, bits of tortoiseshell, and locks of gold are all ingredients next week in a stew that's been simmering for 40 years. Robert Lansing and Marriott Hartley star in an incredible tale of love and longing entitled The Long Morrow on the next installment of The Twilight Zone.
And we'll see you then. Stay happy.
Stay in love.